So, Dylan, are you left-handed or right-handed?
Well, I'm right-handed for, I guess, most things that people would say, you have to
Which hand
decide
do you
on one
write with?
hand. I write with my right hand. My fine motor skills suck with both of them, but they're slightly better on the right side. You've seen my handwriting; it's still not good.
Yes, I have. I guess we could say neither-handed if you
I'm
if you really want to say,
neither
if
hand
you're
dominant.
trying to be impartial here, because I'm just trying to let everybody know if you have any inherent biases here. Now, which handedness do you play hockey? Do you shoot left or do you shoot right? I know the answer to this, but this is for everyone else.
Right. So I play hockey lefty. I bat lefty in baseball. I golf lefty. There is a handful of sports that I am left-handed in, or what is called left-handed. I do have a grand theory about this that we could break into, but I know you're working towards something.
Yes, I am. And we can definitely break into that theory a little bit later. I know there's like the American way and the Canadian way to do that and everything with hockey. But I do have something I'm working towards and something I want to ask you about. Now, what inspired me on this, and I don't know if you saw this story, I think it's from the women's under 18 world championship tournament that happened recently. And I saw that Finland had a game where the entire roster, every skater was left handed.
Yeah, I saw that too. Kind of crazy that would happen. Although, again, I kind of have a theory around this.
Okay, well, I'm interested to hear what your theory is. And actually, you know what? Go ahead. Let's get into your theory here.
Well, my theory is that if you're a right-hand dominant person, you should play hockey lefty, quote unquote lefty, because the hand and the arm essentially that's doing everything when you're playing hockey lefty is your right arm. Right? Like it's the
Yes.
backhand. It's the one controlling when you're puck
If you have one hand
handling.
on your
That's the
stick, it's
one.
the one hand.
Yeah, if it's the one hand on your stick and you're trying to poke check or make a play with one hand, that's the arm that you're using is your right arm. So in my mind, it makes sense that people that are right hand or right arm dominant should be playing hockey lefty. And because majority of the population is right-handed, it makes sense to me then that more hockey players should be left-handed. I know that's not how it ends up working out, but I feel like that should be the case. I feel that way about me with golf and with shooting pool. Like shooting pool, you'd be called right-handed, and it's kind
Yeah.
of a similar thing. But in hockey, it's left. In baseball, it's left, despite it being your forward arm and the arm that you're generating your power and everything from. In golf, it's the same thing. That's the arm that's more active in golf, right? Because it's having to come across your body. It's your right arm. Like people act like I'm sort of ambidextrous because I can play some sports quote unquote lefty. I'm like, no, I'm super right arm dominant because all of the sports that I play lefty involved me using my right arm more than if I was standing on the other side. That's
Yeah,
my grand theory is that actually I think I'm the most right-armed and right-handed person of all time.
okay. And that's interesting because, well, I mean, look, you're not the only one who's, I mean, maybe you are the most right arm person,
Well, yeah,
right hand person of all time. I guess I won't doubt you there.
no, it's
I
just
don't have another
we.
person I
It's
can
just
put up instead.
it just seems arbitrary when some sports decide one side is considered lefty versus righty when I think it should be based off of the mechanics involved, right? Biomechanically, all the things
So
I'm
she goes sport
doing,
by sport.
right? All the things that I'm doing when I play sports, despite that I'm considered a righty for some of them and a lefty for others, I'm using my right arm more in all of these scenarios. But in some cases, like baseball or golf, that's considered, or hockey, I'm considered left handed, even though my right arm is doing the vast majority of the work. And that's the reason that I'm using that side. And baseball and golf
Okay.
may be a little different. I am a lot more open in my hips, torquing that direction. But I just say it. To me, the whole thing, I feel like we're at the point science wise where we could redefine what it is to be a righty or lefty in sports using, the actual body and what's actually happening there, not just
Okay.
which
Well,
side of the pitcher they're on.
point taken, although it is, I think, a little confusing when you get into the minutia of different sports. But we can shelve that point for later a little bit. But it does create this interesting dynamic where I'm reading the internet's just telling me that like 10 to 15% of Americans are left-handed.
Right.
And you look at
Including
NHL
yourself.
players. Yeah, including myself. So I write with my left hand. I throw with my right. I kind of taught
Hmm.
myself to throw switch. So, and I shoot left-handed in hockey. Like about 60% of NHLers. So like 60 to 65% of NHLers shoot left. So you look at pro hockey players, that's about the breakdown there. And it's not really in line with, because you were saying, if let's say 85% of the population is right-handed, and the Canadian way at least is to shoot left if you're right-handed, it's still only like 65% of NHLers. It creates
Mhm.
this weird situation. And so I was looking at that all left-handed team for Finland, and I was wondering, well, does that work? Like, is that good? I feel like you probably want a balance of lefties and righties. That tends to be
Yeah,
the conventional wisdom. And that team did not do very well.
they did
I
not.
believe that's the same team that got relegated. They lost to Hungary, and yeah, they got relegated. It's amazing to see Finland relegated to the next level down. So maybe that's too much. Maybe you don't want a team of all lefties. But it got me thinking: what if we leveled the playing field here and split the NHL's best? Just had them out in the yard playing pond hockey. You split them up, lefties versus righties. Which team is better? Which team would win? And so I made my all left-handed all-star team of
Mhm.
NHLers and my all right-handed team of NHLers. And I sent them both to you. You've had maybe 2 minutes, if that, basically
Yes.
since I've been talking, you've had that amount of time to take a look at the two of them. And I'm curious, Dylan, which team do you think is better?
It is a very interesting question. I think oh man, it's so tough looking at both of these.
They're both stacked.
They're both
There's no
pretty
question about that.
stacked. Yes, these would both be very good teams. These teams are both, this is the gold medal game in any sort of competition, right? These teams are absolutely going to be up there and kind of take the top spot. I think the lefty team kind of has it. I think the center depth there is maybe a little greater than on the right-handed team, and that probably sways things a little bit in favor. Maybe some of the winger depth is slightly better as well. You're certainly going to have your pick of goaltenders on that lefty
Yeah.
team. um,
Well, that's one thing I was kind of confused about, though, because I've heard it different ways.
right.
Which team do you give the goalies that are not, don't play the traditional way, right? Which team do you give those goalies to? Because I've heard it referred to as a left-handed goalie. I've also
Mhm.
heard it as right-handed catching, and I talked with you about it without giving away the topic. And
Right.
you said, well, whichever way they'd play the puck, if that looks like lefty shooting or righty shooting. So that's what I ultimately went with. But I think you could make an argument to flip them.
I think you could make an argument to flip them. Again, it's complicated. Like for me, because they're playing hockey, and there are times that they play the puck and they're using both arms to do so. It seems to make sense that whichever way that their blade would be facing for that is what their handedness in hockey would be. Again, I think there's a greater debate about whether or not the terminology for it is right or not, but that makes sense. But at the same time, like if you were playing baseball, you would call that player right-handed because they're catching with their left hand and then they would be throwing with their right, right? Like the hand that is
Right.
available to do anything other than just catch the ball in a glove is the right arm. Everything else that a player is doing is going to be on the right side. So you would call that player a righty. But I think for hockey purposes, they have to be considered lefties. But in my mind, there is no like clear line that says this.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments, by the way, because I'm curious what everyone else has to say. Because I looked around the internet a little bit. I couldn't find a clear consensus from everybody. But I'm interested in what everyone has to say on the goalie issue. That said, do you think goaltending makes enough of a difference here, or is the left team just pretty much clearly the favorite here? Does the right team have a chance? Is it that lopsided?
I think the right team definitely has a chance, but I do feel like things in really all three areas probably skew to the left-handed team, right? Like
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
would agree with that. And making these teams too, it felt like the depth was there more. The high end, again, like down the middle, like you said, McDavid, Matthews, Barkov, Crosby. That's
it's pretty good.
that's hard to beat. I don't know how you really compete with that. So I found just a much deeper bench. I felt like I was having harder times with the scratches with the left. Now, question here, Dylan, because the one area I felt like the right team had a noticeable advantage was coaching.
Oh.
And I looked around, and I think the best coaches in the NHL, and if you notice on the top of the graphic, I included coaches.
Mhm.
And of course, both coaching lineups are stacked as well. But I think some of the best coaches in the NHL are actually right-handed. And I looked at their shooting from when they were players and everything. And I know you love Paul Maurice.
Yep.
He's going to be coaching this right-handed team.
Yeah. No, I'm
Do you
with you.
think coaching gives them an edge?
I think the coaching has to give them edge. I mean, what are the two like most recent pseudo dynasty teams? It's the two Florida teams. Both right there. Paul Maurice, John Cooper on that right-handed team. I'd probably take that as a coaching staff over, just about anybody else, right? Rob Brindamore on the left-handed side, Chris Knobloch on the left-handed side, guys that get far, but they don't get it done.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. If it came down to a final here, I had to include Knobloch. Again, I don't know that he's like top 6 coaches in the league, but on a team with McDavid and Draisaitl starting out as your top line, I feel like you should probably include Knobloch as the coach. Also, again, there was just such a short bench of lefties. It was kind of weird. The coach is more skewed right-handed.
Yeah, that
Is
is
there
that
something
is
behind
interesting.
that, Dylan? Do you have any theories for that?
I don't know. Already I'm questioning my whole theory about the mechanics of the arms because really I was thinking about it after I talked about the hips opening up, and it really does have to do with whole body rotation because that's how you're getting power in hockey or baseball or anything. So maybe there's something more there, and whether or not you know, you determine it's lefty or righty. Because I would argue right-handed hockey players when they're generating shot, what are they doing? They're twisting their bodies to the left.
All right. Well, part of me is thinking maybe I should have given you more time to prepare on this. Part of me is thinking I definitely should not have.
Yeah,
And
no,
I'm,
you
I'm very
probably
glad I
should not have.
didn't.
I would have commissioned some grand, like, academic researched, peer-reviewed journal article to back me up on this and to investigate this topic simpler. I'll boil it down to this. This is why the left-handed team is better than the right-handed team and why I think they would win in any sort of competition against each other. 4 of the top 5 leading point scorers in the National Hockey League right now are on this left-handed team. Right, top 5 point scorers: Nathan MacKinnon, Connor McDavid, Nikita Kucherov, Macklin Celebrini, Leon Draisaitl. All of them but Nathan MacKinnon are left-handed. Probably give me that team.
Yeah, and as I was scrolling down the leading
And they get the
scorers and everything,
goalies.
yeah,
Not
on
that Logan
NHL.com
Thompson,
it
Vermelka
lists.
are bad, but like,
Yeah, listen, I think you could have a great game from either of these guys. All 4 of them that I picked, really, you could at any time they could steal a game. But I think I am with you. I think the left-handed team is better, which I guess makes sense because they're like 65% of the NHL players, a slightly larger pool to grab from. Are they, whatever the proportion is, like 65-35, are they that much better, or do they over or underperform based on that, do you think?
it's a good question. I,
Like, is it
I
just that there's more of
yeah,
them to draw from?
maybe I don't know. That it just feels. I don't know. This feels largely right. Like, I guess again, I'm like looking now.
Largely left?
Yeah. I'm looking at the true. I'm looking at the top 5 goal scorers in the National Hockey League, and Nathan MacKinnon is the only righty on there, and that includes Jason Robertson, who I'm noticing is not. Well, he's a healthy scratch on this left-handed team.
Yeah. So that's thing. It's a deep bench, and I didn't want to leave him off completely because I know we already talked about the Olympic rosters. And I was defending that he should be there on Team USA, and so I think at least he can be a healthy scratch for Team Left-handed. Now, okay, getting into the roster selection a little bit,
Yes.
because this, I was really interested in your take on this because again, I had such a great pool of players to choose from, basically splitting the league in half for these two teams. Tear apart these rosters, Dylan. Where did I go wrong? Like, did I actually do a good job picking these, or did I totally mess up?
I think for the most part you did a good job picking these. I think like some of the maybe
I know
like
you'd have the
some of the
lines be
line
different
the line
because we
combinations
disagree on
are
these things.
yeah, are a little different. Like on the left-handed team, Austin Matthews with Kaprizov and Kucherov. Like that just like who's doing what on that line cuz they're all just guys.
Kucherov's distributing.
Yeah, I guess. But like I don't know. Who's going out there to make space for the other two guys? You know what I mean? Like who's opening up the lanes, the shooting lanes, who's going net front, right? Like it's just it's a very loaded line of guys that kind of want to either be shooters or play kind of a little bit to the outside on Kucherov's case. So I think like that line kind of needs somebody. The other ones, though, I'll give you credit. I think the other three lines on this left-handed team make sense, right? Like McDavid, Draisaitl obviously makes sense to have them together, and then Rantanen can provide a size element there, go to the inside and do that sort of thing. Barkov and the Kachucks together, that's your shutdown line. Nobody's going to do anything against that group at
Figured you
all.
wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah, and then Celebrini with Crosby, they have the chemistry, and then you give them a shooter in Kyle Connor. Crosby can go do the dirty work net front, and him and Celebrini can put Kyle Connor in some great spots to score some goals. So the rest of that makes a lot of sense to me on the left-handed side team. As for the right side, again, I think you're just trying to stick some guys together that could play together. Mitch Marner seems a little too far down on the list on the fourth line here. Personally, I think you'd want to put him up there maybe with the Bedard Eichel group. Just have him play with Eichel, who he can play with. He's doing that in Vegas right now, but also because Eichel and Bedard can both be shooters, Marner can then be the distributor for them, whereas I feel like William Nylander probably also wants to be a shooter. So I would probably do that personally, but for the most part, I think you did an okay job here.
Okay, I'll take that. That's usually lighter criticism than you'll usually give my line combination. So I'm okay with that. Now, is there any? But I want to hear from everyone else too. Like, did I get this right? Did I mess up? Also, especially the snubs, because that's what I'm wondering about, Dylan. Is there anybody who was left off of Team Left that should have been there? Did I write off anyone from Team Right that I shouldn't have? Let me know in the comments. But also, Dylan, is there anybody who you're thinking of that probably should have made one of these two teams that didn't?
So the one guy that I think was probably left off the right-handed team in some capacity, and this is not even getting into the idea that you have Ovechkin as a scratch, when I feel like you'd want him out there just for the power plays, if anything. He can play 9 minutes.
That's the idea. He's on the roster for if you need him for the power play.
Yeah. Is Wyatt Johnston.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I feel like, it's a point per game guy, somebody who is close to, being in the top 5 in the league in goal scoring, and somebody that can, basically play any position at forward, right? He could be on either side of the wings. He could play center if you absolutely needed him to. I feel like the versatility, the goal scoring ability, while still having some good setup stuff, and the areas of the ice that he could play on, I feel like Wyatt Johnston should probably be on this right-handed team. But that being said, like, I don't know who you totally drop off. Like, Cole Caulfield is maybe a little bit more one trick than Wyatt Johnston is. Doesn't have quite the size there. I don't know. That being said,
I wanted to give him to Suzuki to have them play together.
Yeah, like, I don't hate the idea of that. So, and it's not like, they have the same amount of goals right now, Wyatt Johnston and Cole Caulfield this year. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's a huge thing. But that was the one person that I was like, why isn't he on this right-handed team? I thought for sure I'd see him there, and he's not there.
Yeah, and he was on the list. He was right there behind Ovechkin as one of the healthy scratches. I mean, there's some good names left off of this. Like, they do have a deep bench, like Mark Scheifele, Matt Barzal, Kirill Marchenko, Tage Thompson. Like, there's a deep bench for both of these teams. I mean, I think at Team Right actually gave me tougher decisions to make forward wise. I felt like there was less of a drop off from the end of the lineup to the scratches and whatnot. But it was interesting kind of seeing the dynamic of the two teams. So thank you for indulging me on this. Thank you for playing along. I thought it was a fun exercise, but yeah, everyone let me know. I'll post a graphic on Instagram and everything with the two teams so everyone can take a look at them and kind of see what you all think of the rosters. And yeah, let me know if especially the right-handed people out there, because I'm sure there's plenty listening to this. Are we underrating the right-handed team? Could they pull on upset? Could they be better than we think? Let us know. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, it really is just that drop off at center. It's your bottom 6 centers being Nick Suzuki, Braden Point, which I would probably have Braden Point's line be the third line, probably there, compared to Barkov, Crosby.
Yeah,
I can't help but feel like they're gonna lose that matchup down the middle.
Probably. And that is where hockey is won. So fair point. Now, as I was trying to put these teams together, there was a team that I think was trying to screw me up on this.
Yeah.
That was trying to throw me off. because again, I'm looking at the lists and seeing the handedness for everybody, and you think you've got that pretty solidly nailed down. Like I think this is something that's been established about players, and then I see this report. This is via Colin Stevenson reporting from New York Rangers practice yesterday, and the tweet says, "Notice anything weird? That's Panarin shooting lefty, Trocheck playing lefty. There's a drill that the Rangers are running that has everybody playing opposite handed."
What?
I feel like this is targeted at me as I'm trying to put these
Yeah.
rosters together. And I see this, the New York Rangers, where everybody's playing with their opposite hand. Do I need to consider Panarin for team lefty? Do I need to, like, thankfully there's no Rangers here except for, I guess, well, Adam Fox. Does he move over to team lefty? I had him on team righty. What do I do?
It's a good question.
So that begs that question. But I think the more important question, what are the Rangers doing? we're at that point in the season already, and this was the red glare curse from last week. It came out right after we dropped the podcast, the letter from ownership talking about how this is not going to be their season. They're going to have to sell off some pieces, and they are performing pretty horribly. The Rangers are, like, it didn't really give them a spark here, and now we're at the point of the season where they're practicing with the opposite hand.
Actually, this is good because it is making me think, why is Connor Bedard on the left side on the second line of this right-handed team you've made, and it's not Panarin? Why is Panarin not there? That's actually insane.
I thought about it again. Maybe it's the Rangers just having the down season they're having. I don't know. I still felt like I liked
56 points in 50 games.
Yeah, I don't know. I did go with a younger slanted team. So there you go. Maybe I shouldn't have left Panarin off of there. Although apparently he's eligible for team lefty now. So it threw me off, Dylan.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. I understand you just throwing your hands up and being like, I'm not even touching New York Rangers then in this case.
Which I think is kind of what everyone should do at this point.
Just about.
Now, Dylan, I know you had your theory about the handedness and, hockey incorporating different things. And I know that you love thinking about practices, drills. I mean, you dive deep into this stuff. What do you think the point is here? What are the Rangers trying to do with this drill? What is it? What are they trying to accomplish here?
So it's not like, if it was just everybody's having to play on the other side for drills, it's like, okay, well, hockey scrambling, it's fluid. You're going to find yourself on the right side of the ice as a left wing at times, right? Like, you got to be able to play off your backhand for things. I understand practicing in that scenario. I'm not sure I understand wanting to mess with muscle memory by making you use a stick of the opposite hand. Like, that to me seems like you're like taking it maybe a step too far. The only time I could see this working is if it's specifically with your defenseman and you're just working on scenarios where defenseman's stick breaks, just needs a stick from somebody. And we've seen this before. Usually you try to get somebody who's the same handedness to give them their stick, but every so often a righty defenseman, say, needs to use a lefty stick because a stick in their hands is better than no stick, even if it's going to be backwards. So maybe wanting to practice that with defensemen, although it's such a niche scenario, I would argue you probably shouldn't practice for that.
That was my follow-up question. How high of a priority is that scenario when you are last place in the Eastern Conference, when you're 2-7-1 in your last 10? Maybe that's the key. Maybe that's why you only have 5 wins at home this season. I don't know. Maybe they're seeing something I'm not.
I would be I'd be very curious if anybody asked Mike Sullivan about this afterwards, and if the answer was just, we're just trying to keep it light. Because everything has been just such a disaster for the Rangers, especially here recently, and now you do have that letter from Chris Drury going out, and everybody is talking about trades, and that's got to be on everybody's minds player-wise. That's the only other conclusion I could come to, is they were just trying to have a little bit of fun, do something a little goofy, lighten the mood, because I'm sure the vast majority of the time right now for this team, the mood has not been light.
I think that's fair. And that would be a legitimate reason to run that drill, even though it reminds me of my old youth hockey coach. Shout out Coach Jason, you know him.
Yeah.
Who had us practice with our skates untied to build ankle strength.
Yeah, don't recommend that, but
No, if we see the Rangers doing that, then that might be a problem.
Strengthens your ankles right up into the point where you break it.
Yeah. It never happened to me. I didn't end up spraining my ankle, so maybe
Well,
maybe there's something to it. I was a goalie, so I didn't.
I was gonna say
Which is even worse, I think.
anecdote. Yes, anecdotal fallacy says it's not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. What more do you need?
Yeah, because otherwise, like I'm a big fan of drills. Like most recently, just covering here Seattle-based hockey, right? The Seattle Torrent, the PWHL team, during training camp and still during their practices during the week, sometimes they do physical drills, whether it's net front or along the boards, board battle drills, stuff like that, and they'll have their defenders play with their sticks upside down, so that they can't just use their stick. It's about working on that body position, leverage against the forwards that are forechecking, all of that stuff, trying to play against the puck, but knowing that, at times you're going to be limited there. That's something that I understand. That makes sense to me. I just cannot find a scenario where this makes sense for me other than just player morale.
Yeah, and really, what kind of all you have left is player
Mhm.
morale. Is I think we can transition over to that letter from Chris Drury and kind of letting the fans know that this is not our year. We're going to have to sell off some pieces, and I think you look at the rumblings around the league. Also, it's been made clear that they're not going to re-sign Artemi Panarin. They're going to
Yeah.
look to move him before the deadline. Other players potentially on the move, like a Vincent Trocheck or a Braden Schneider, they're going to look at a lot of different things. Where do the Rangers go from here? Because seems like they're going to have a little bit of a sell off. I don't know that they're going to completely tear it down. I don't know how much they can, because it sounds like, say, Mika Zibanejad doesn't want out. He doesn't want to go anywhere. JT Miller, both those guys have trade protection. It doesn't seem like they're going anywhere anytime soon. What do you think is the play here for the Rangers now?
I mean, I think it has to be this, right? You have to get assets back, especially for like Panarin, who's not, you're saying you're not going to bring him back, and if I'm him, I don't know that I want to come back anyway. It's kind of crazy because this is what the second time in 8 years that they're having to hit the reset button. Like it's kind of wild to me. I think you blew the opportunity to be successful with Shesterkin on the cheaper deal, really with everybody on cheaper deals than what they have now. But also, the core group of guys that you're going to still have after this, because guys like JT Miller and Mika Zibanejad don't want to waive their no moves, and I get that. Why wouldn't you want to be in New York? You're part of the one group of people that gets to actually exist and have fun in New York City. You're famous and wealthy. That's the one scenario where New York is a lot of fun, actually. So I get them not wanting to leave, but like you're gonna have them locked in as your 1 and 2 C. They're both 32 years of age, both under contract for a long time still. I don't know how much you're going to be able to move around them. You do have the benefit of being the New York based team. You're going to be able to sign free agents. Free agents will always want to play in Madison Square Garden and live in New York there for the reasons I just described. And you will be able to reset, but I think at some point you're going to need to find you're either going to need to reset to the point where you can, find some good players to play with Zibanejad and Miller, but also work on your depth, which is hard to do, or you're going to need to wait for the next group of, homegrown talent to come through, but that's going to be a long ways off.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have a whole lot in the pipeline.
I mean, Shesterkin
And
is signed forever and he's already 30 now.
well, that's the key too, and I think that would be the big piece that I think that'll decide really how much you're tearing this down or not. Because if you're trying to go full rebuild, which I'm not convinced that they are, I don't know that the Rangers really want to go that route. And you look at how kind of short their last rebuild was. They really hit the accelerate button on that when they signed Artemi Panarin. Like, they didn't go through the full like 5 or 6 years of being really bad that most teams do. They kind of went for it a little earlier, and I think they might like to do something similar, because I'm sure they
Yeah.
could find some free agent in 2 or 3 years that would want to sign for an up and coming group. So I don't know if they're going to completely bottom out, but I feel like that's not really possible with Igor Shesterkin on the roster. To just completely bottom out and be that bad. I mean, this season they're kind of managing their bottom five, but
Mhm.
still, it feels like this is a unique year too, where there aren't a whole lot of truly bad teams. That seems like the key piece. And of course, he's got a no move clause that goes all throughout his contract. He would have to want to leave as well.
Right. And his contract runs to 2033. Like again, it's for a minute. Um I agree with you. Like he'll keep you. He's good enough that he's going to keep you from bottoming out. I also think that age isn't as huge a concern for him just because of how good he is. Like I think those elite tier guys find a way to stay pretty good through their 30s as goaltenders, assuming
Yeah.
injury doesn't come for them. And so yeah, I think it's going to be tough for them. Yeah, I don't know. This feels like though kind of what's always been the problem for New York, right? They're never, the fans there don't want to see them bad. They play at Madison Square Garden where you can charge a lot of money for tickets, but you have to make sure that the product's good. It's a great cash cow team. And free agents are always going to want to go there, so you always have the ability to not be bad. Like being a playoff team outside of years like this is just always there and on the table for you. How do you not just continually choose that? Right? Like and I feel
Yeah.
like it's been that way now for the last like 30, 35 years. And that's but I think that's also why they've been basically a playoff time for the vast majority of the last 30 years and they have one Stanley Cup. Right? And that's not even within the last 30 years. Actually, that's older than 30 years ago now. Right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's not in what
That was
either
the
of our
year I was
lifetimes,
born. That
right?
was the first Stanley
Yeah.
Cup handed out since I've been
Oh,
alive.
just barely in your lifetime.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was about a month after I was born. So I feel like this is just what it is to be a Rangers fan is just that you're going to have a playoff team almost every year. 9 out of every 10 years this team's going to make the playoffs. You're always going to have exciting players to watch because free agents and guys are never going to have the Rangers on their no trade list. Right? Free agents are always
Mhm.
going to value it. You're always going to be able to land top free agents, but the timelines for everybody very rarely line up and you very rarely have the ability to build out something that's sustainable. And that's why, if you don't just get lucky one year during a playoff run, that's just kind of it. But it just feels like that's the Rangers' existence. It's what it's been, and I don't see it changing anytime soon either.
Yeah, and personally, I think it's not a bad existence.
It's really not.
No, I think it's a good way to operate things. You're always getting some interesting hockey. You're always, kind of in it at least where you can be in that conversation and think playoffs. And yeah, and they do go fairly deep. Like that was my next question for you is was this because the Rangers made a decision to sign Artemi Panarin to kind of hit the accelerate button on their rebuild and come out of it
Hmm.
fast. That whole cycle is over now. We've seen what came of it. They didn't get a Stanley Cup out of it. And so from that measure, you could say, well, it's a failure because they didn't win a Stanley Cup. And if you want to look at it that way, then I can't argue with you.
Right.
But was that decision and was this build a failure? Because they did get to two conference finals.
Yep.
And I look at this and I can't be all that mad at it. I think they still probably made the right call.
I think they did. They put themselves in a position to go and win a Stanley Cup, and that's all you can do. And I feel like they did. They did that. They, like you said, they go to two conference finals. They had very good groups. I'm with you. I don't think like anything they did was like objectively bad or that they shouldn't have done it. This is this is reality in a 32 league world, a team league world, where only one team can win. There has to be 31 losers every single year. That's going to include 15 teams that made the playoffs every year can't win the Stanley Cup. Of those 15, at least 10 of them feel like they're in their competitive cup window. And that's say 9 of them every year not being able to win. If you're just not lucky enough to be part of that 10% group that actually wins over a 5-year stretch or whatever, is that really on you? It's like the Carolina thing. Would any of us say like it's easy to say Carolina is kind of like if they're failures because they haven't gotten to the Stanley Cup final, but at the same time they've been the like most consistent team as far as getting deeper into the playoffs every single season. Is that actually bad? Like our measure of success gets very skewed when we're talking about teams that kind of perennially find themselves in the spot that the Rangers have kind of existed in. I don't think but the moment you look beyond that limited group and that limited sample size, you're like, wow, no, that the Rangers for the last 5 seasons have been one of the best teams in hockey. Like,
Yeah, they have,
that's
and
not
I think
bad.
no, it's not. And I think the process is for like a team like Carolina. I think the process is solid. And I mean, like Carolina, they're not at the end of their run yet. The Rangers kind of have to do this,
Yes.
as we just talked about, these more shorter term runs kind of things. But like, yeah, I think you can't have too big a problem with it. Now, with the Rangers, when I say the process is good, um, that's more of a question. I don't know if the process has necessarily been good for the Rangers, because now a lot of this stuff turns to Chris Drury, who still the GM of the New York Rangers, and seems like will be the one to kind of lead them through this process. But that raises another question: should he be the one to lead them through this process? And the Rangers, I think, have made their fair share of mistakes over the last few years, and some people even pointing to the key moment where they get out of the Barclay Goodrow contract, they put him on waivers, the Sharks pick him up, and I think that you might have soured the locker room on Drury and on the organization. Do you think he's the right guy to continue to be leading this team, and how much do you think there is to that? Because I think there's much bigger factors in this probably than the Barclay Goodrow situation, but
Mhm.
I've seen some people pointing to that as like that's the moment it all started to fall apart.
It could have been the last straw, and then that leads to everything falling apart, right? And I think that there's something to that. I think, look, one thing we have not touched on, but I think absolutely matters, and it matters more to the front office than it does to the players themselves. But this is also going to be one of it, is ownership and what your options are as general manager of this team are limited by what ownership's going to let you do at times, right? And one of the things that I think ownership does not want with the New York Rangers is ever there to be a like full on rebuild. Like that's unacceptable. And so there's other things in there that I'm sure are also unacceptable, um, for that ownership group when it comes to signing or extending or whatever. But I think that that's when you're talking about having to judge Drury and the job that he's done here. I do think like his options are limited, not to the point of saying like he's had to operate with one hand tied behind his back, because he definitely has not. But if ever there was a time like right now, say, where it's, the option of kind of bottoming out for like 2 or 3 years to really retool, that just doesn't exist for him. And so he has to kind of operate with those restrictions. That being said, I'm not sure I've ever been on board with him being the guy. I feel like almost all of the moves he's made have not been that great, and have not serviced them getting over the hump and being a team that can get there and win. I think some of the coaching changes have been questionable at times. Like not necessarily the Mike Sullivan one, but he was the guy who made the Laviolette hire, right? Like I was questionable about that one. I mean, they got to a conference final with him, but still, I don't know. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that he's ever really been the guy in my book. That being said, I will acknowledge that it's not like the easiest job to be in, given who your
Yeah.
boss is.
No, I think that's fair. I mean, where I really point at is the drafting too, and I think that's why
Drafting's
it's going to
been
be a
rough,
little
yeah.
tougher. The drafting, especially at the top of the draft. I mean, of course, everyone looks at Lafreniere and Kako. Like with a first overall pick and a second overall pick, you need at least one major difference maker. They don't really get that. You go back, before Kravtsov at 9, Elias Anderson at 7. It's rough. I mean, it looks like Brennan Othman's not going to turn into much, at least so far. I mean, watching him play when the Kraken faced the Rangers, he had a really, really rough game. He's not producing. The drafting's been pretty bad too.
No, it has been. I think it's gotten better here in slightly more recent times. Brendan Othman was like he's kind of a power forward build. Like he made sense for them in 2021 because they were going into that stretch where it was like, hey, we need depth pieces, like a depth winger who can play with skilled players but has some side and some physicality, blah blah blah. But like he was also a player that was going to take 3 years to get there. So that doesn't make sense. Like you can't draft a guy that fills your need right now. They just take too long to ever get there. Um, so I think like that's been an issue for them recently for sure.
Yeah. Now, looking at some of the players that the Rangers are probably going to get rid of here, who could be on the market from them? We talked about Panarin, we talked about Trocheck. I think the really
Well,
interesting one is
I was gonna
Artemi
say, just to
Panarin.
go back and be fair,
Yeah,
for Chris Drury, he's only had 3 first-round picks as
that's true. In
general
his tenure,
manager.
yeah.
Like,
Speaking of Drury, yeah.
yeah, like Lafreniere and Capo Caco were not Chris Drury draft picks.
Yeah, and that's true, and that shouldn't be on Drury. I'm talking about just the overall like process of the organization, and really, I mean, with the draft picks, it's so much on the scouting staff.
Right.
Although maybe first and
And I
second
don't
overall, you're
hate
having the GM play a large role, but
Yeah, and I don't hate some of the Drury draft picks. Like Gabe Perreault, I think was a nice grab at where he was at, and we're seeing him come up and start to get going with the Rangers. And I'm a fan of EJ Emery, who they took in 2024, defensive defenseman, so it has that ceiling attached to him, and a late first rounder. So not going to be probably the most elite defensive defenseman in the league, but somebody who's going to be able to be a top 4 defenseman for them for a while.
yeah, and I mean, you've gotten even just from like you've gotten NHLers from like a fourth rounder in Noah Laba, fifth rounder in Victor Mancini.
Mhm.
Like that's an accomplishment there. So yeah, it hasn't all been bad, but again, they've only had one pick in the top 20 since taking the year they took Lafreniere first overall. It really has kind of been a sharp change for them, but that's just part of that process that the Rangers kind of have to go through, as we talked about. But I'm interested on the Artemi Panarin front because it looks like he's almost certainly going to get moved by the deadline. Do you have any teams in mind right away that you think would be the best fit for him, or that you'd want to see him go to?
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of contender could probably use him, and it would be fun to see him go to. I know really the teams that are going to be in on him are going to be either like the most elite contenders, or they're going to be the larger markets, and teams that have upcoming cap space. Like I know I'm not the first person to bring them up. Lots of people bring them up, but like the Kings, if they want to try to make a push for the second half of this year and make their case for re-signing him long term, LA makes a lot of sense for him. There would be room for him, and um, they'll have the ability to bring him back if he wants to come back. And it's just kind of it's similar to a New York situation where it's a good spot to be in if you're able to be a professional athlete, and also the Kings just like having star players like that around. That's just something that they target and that they value organizationally, and it does help them kind of do the same thing that the Rangers do, which is just like hang around and be a playoff team all the time and take that cash. You could do
Yeah,
that. Panarin's good for that.
yeah, especially if you were to do it before the deadline. Like they need some good PR right now with how
Yeah.
things are going for them this season. I think it would distract everyone from the very real issues the team has.
Yeah.
Is that where you'd want to see him go, or is there a team you'd prefer to see him on?
I don't know that there's a specific team that I want to see him on. I think there's lots of places he could go, and be successful. The cap wise and what teams could give up to get him, I think become like a question. You know, uh, I'd love to see him on like a team like Anaheim that has like a bunch of young players, and then
That'd be
have
fun.
him just like skill it up with those guys. I've talked with you for a long time about Florida potentially being a spot for him. I think there's lots and lots of avenues to go. It's just going to be a matter of who wants to give up what it's going to take to get him, without the assurance necessarily that he wants to sign an extension there, or what kinds of extensions that he wants. And I know Elliot Friedman talked about it today on 32 Thoughts, the idea that he very much thinks he can play another 5 years in the National Hockey League. So whatever extension you're looking at is probably going to be more termed based than short-term cash based. But those are all options for me. That I think are going to be interesting to see. I think teams that are loaded up with young talent and have lots of prospects that they can give up to bring in Panarin should be interested. The team that I've mentioned to you for a while has been San Jose as well. Just stick him out there with Celebrini, let them go to town. You could sign him to big money short term if you want. I don't know that you want to do the long term approach with him, though, is the one thing.
Yeah, that's what makes it tricky. I mean, we have discussed maybe like a 2 by 20 type of
Hmm.
deal, for a team. And I think for San Jose, that makes a ton of sense. Like they're going to need to get to the cap floor. They're going to have more than 20 mil of cap space to play around with. You could do that for a couple of years. But if it is a 5 year deal, then you're talking about the meat of your window with Celebrini. And, if it's a 10 mil cap hit or whatever, he's probably not going to be worth that in 4 or 5 years' time. So then it really limits the number of teams that I think could bring him in.
Yeah, for sure. Do you
And
have
then
a spot that makes sense for you?
I think the best mix of fun and realistic would be Colorado,
Hmm.
just to see that team get even more stacked this year.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it. I think that could be pretty fun. That would be my pick, I suppose. Even though like something like Anaheim or San Jose would be more fun than that, but I don't know how realistic that is. Certainly, given that the Sharks have already brought in a forward, so that seems not the most realistic to me. Especially they need to address the blue. I'll talk about it when we
I know,
talk
I
about the
know.
keeper Sherwood trade, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. Last thing on the Rangers for me, unless you have anything else.
Nope.
I know you like Vincent Trocheck,
Yeah.
and normally I wouldn't play matchmaker for a 2C here, but I know you're a fan of Trocheck. Where would you want to see him go?
Again, I mean, I want to see him on any sort of team that seems poised to make a deep playoff run, because I think he's the kind of player that, as solid as he is in the regular season, can hit that next level and really be the perfect 2C for a cup contending team. I think like he would have been a great fit on Colorado last year if the Rangers were in this spot. Colorado could have brought him in instead of Brock Nelson. Obviously, things are working out just fine with Brock Nelson there, but I feel like a Vincent Trocheck would be exactly what Colorado needs. They don't need him anymore. I'd love to see him go to Minnesota if you could swing
Yes, that was
that.
the team I had.
Like I feel like he could be your 2C there and be very successful, and he adds. I mean, that's really like the one big weak spot for this Minnesota roster right now is that 2C position, and he completely shores that up for you.
Yeah, no, Minnesota, and the timeline works perfectly with what he has left on his deal and your Quinn Hughes push, and like that's the two. I don't think you can really get a better 2C option on of the guys who's available for a deep playoff run. So yeah, the Trocheck to Minnesota seems like a great fit. Now, going
Unless
from
Detroit really believes in themselves, they could bring him in there too.
That's true. No, if they do believe in themselves, they could. I mean, they've certainly got prospects they could give up. I mean, if I'm the Rangers, I'm trying to make a deal with Detroit. Just looking at the prospects they potentially have to move, there are a lot of guys I'd be happy with. So that could be a fit there as well. But going from hypothetical trades that might happen before the trade deadline to a couple that have already happened,
Hmm.
we were wondering whether there was going to be kind of this artificial trade deadline of the Olympic break. And I will say there's already been more movement than I thought there would be, just in the fact that we've gotten 2 trades involving some of the larger pieces that are going to be available. So we'll go chronological here, and we'll start with the Rasmus Andersson deal. Vegas getting Rasmus Andersson from Calgary for Zach Whitecloud, prospect, and a first round pick and a second in 2027 and a second round pick in 2028 that becomes a first if Vegas wins the cup. So it's a big return if they win the cup. If they do, I don't think they care.
They don't care.
But initial thoughts on this Rasmus Andersson deal for Vegas?
It's Vegas doing what Vegas does, right? They go out, they land one of the big fish that's available at the deadline, somebody that is very much going to help them out in the near term, which is what Vegas cares about. They don't care about that first round pick and a potential second first round pick. That's just the price of doing business for them. I do love, to an extent, how they just continually push off the first rounders like it's a video game of like, look, you can just
They
keep
really
doing
do.
that. Like you can literally just keep doing that. And if you bring in a guy who plays 5 or 6 seasons for you at an elite level and helps you be an elite tier team, and then once he's done, you just kind of trade those next first round picks for the next guy to do that. You can keep this going forever. It doesn't necessarily feel as much like a house of cards as it might should, because as long as you can just keep bringing in guys via trade that are going to play 5 6 good seasons for you, that's all that matters. You just
And,
take it at 5 6 years at a time.
and if they're late first, that is more than you can reasonably expect from a late first
Yeah.
round pick to give you.
Right, like, you're not, like, gonna replenish your core with those guys usually, right? So, like, the real thing will be, like, whenever Jack Eichel is kind of done, and cooked, but at this point, they've built themselves into enough of a destination that the next time a superstar is available for trade like Jack Eichel was, or there's guys hitting free agency, just bring them in. And,
Yeah.
like, I don't know what an actual rebuild will ever look like for Vegas because they're still like 10 years out from needing one.
Right. It's the kind of thing you can do if you're a really desirable destination where, and they've done this every year where you pay deadline prices, you pay rental prices at the trade deadline for guys who you know you can extend and sign further because they'll want to be with you. And like with Rasmus Anderson, this deal, there's no extension that comes with it. He's on the final year of his contract. They I don't think we're given permission to talk with him about an extension, but they're pretty confident they can get it done. I've seen reports that he was Vegas was reportedly number one on his list. Like I would be shocked if
Mhm.
they don't get an extension done with Anderson. That's got to be part of the plan here. But it's the kind of thing that you can do that other franchises maybe can't, where they can't be as sure that they're going to re-sign a guy. Which, yeah, I mean, giving up this kind of package for a pure rental, that's a
Just,
lot.
yeah.
That's not sustainable. You can't continue to do that. But Vegas can certainly do that because they know they're going to re-sign him. And it's funny with the first round picks going out into the future because again, we know the whole thing with Vegas. Just they never keep their first round picks. They always give them up. Calgary in particular is in a position to potentially own the next three of the Vegas picks. Calgary is hoarding those Vegas picks quite a bit.
Yeah, they really value those late firsts. I mean, look, they're gonna have their own high firsts to go with these late firsts, so like it makes sense. Calgary needs to go through a long rebuild. They're gonna, these picks will actually be useful to them. But yeah, like Rasmus Anderson coming in, he just replaces Petrangelo. Like right, like yeah, slightly different player in terms of play style and everything, but you got Shea Theodore, you got a good puck mover there. You've got somebody who can do that job, but he's going to be able to slot in and certainly eat the minutes that Petrangelo was eating for this team. These last couple of years in the playoffs, you basically just got younger. Like you upgraded and you got younger, and it cost you not much.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say an upgrade over a healthy Petrangelo, but yeah, you still it's that spot in the lineup that you fill.
Right.
You get younger, or I mean, Petrangelo, in a year or two, again, he's getting pretty old. So yeah, you upgraded in that sense. You get younger,
It's a
and also
7-year age difference between the two players.
no, it's a big age
It's a big
difference for sure.
difference.
No, that's true, and that's kind of what they do. They'll go refresh and they'll bring in guys who are like 29, and they'll kind of run this cycle again with the players, and then when they get old enough, they'll ship them out, and that's how it works, and it's brilliant. I think the other good thing about this for Vegas is that the D market this year seems pretty darn weak. Like Anderson was really the
He was
only
the
guy of
guy.
this caliber that was available, and I think that explains the higher price they paid to get him because if not him, who are you getting? Like, who's this next best available D on the market right now? I
I
think like
genuinely don't
Connor
know.
Connor Murphy, Jamie Alexiak,
Right. It's a
um,
huge drop off.
different like contract. He's a 24-year-old, but like Braden Schneider, like there's nobody of this caliber that's available now.
No, there was no 23 plus minute a night defenseman but Rasmus Anderson on the market.
Yeah, so
He
they get
was
ahead of
the one.
things, and
And
any other suitor or team that now wants one of these guys, you're out of luck.
right. And somebody who can also move the puck. Like that's the thing that I think also gets lost in this is, he's got 30 points in 48 games playing on this Calgary Flames team. What can he do in
No, he's got a
Vegas?
ton of offensive skill. Yeah.
Like what can he do in Vegas? He's gonna put up, he'll be on probably like close to a 70-point pace once he gets into that lineup and everything.
Yeah, no, I mean he's gonna. I love the fit here for Vegas too. Like the offensive chops that Anderson has, along with the forwards that he has to work with Vegas. Like I think, and by the way, Anderson I think is going to make his Vegas debut tonight,
Mhm.
so that's going to be fun to watch. And I think he's going to be a great fit. I also love the attitude fit
Yeah,
because I didn't really like realize that this was a continuous thing. I'd seen him do it once, but I didn't realize he'd done it like many times. The stare down Selly. Have you seen that from Rasmus
yes,
Anderson where he
yes.
just
It's
scores,
so good.
stares down a fan? that's perfect Golden Knight energy.
It is. It really is. No, it's a great fit for them. He's going to provide offense from the back end for them. He's going to provide defense and the ability to eat tough minutes for them. It's exactly what they needed as they look to make another run. I mean, the big thing is just like I know that they're points wise they're not doing that great. Although they're picking it up, it feels like. Um, I look at this team and I go, I don't really know why they haven't been more dominant, just given everything. Other than just the lineup has never really been healthy altogether.
Yeah, I mean, goaltending hasn't been great. I know
Goaltending has
you've
been
pointed that
bad.
out
I know.
a few
Yeah.
times. Goaltending's been iffy. The lineup, yeah, again, I think also you're in the Pacific this year. I don't think they really have to worry a ton. Look, you're gonna face Edmonton in the second round, and that's gonna be a real tough series. But I like their odds in it, and
Yeah.
at that point, then you take it from there. So I don't have huge concerns about them until you get into maybe the conference final against whichever team. But maybe the Central just beats themselves up enough that you get a team that's gone through a whole lot to get out of the Central. So I still don't hate the path for Vegas.
No, and I still hold that the only bad contract they've ever given out is the Aiden Hill extension.
Yeah,
Because it's the only contract they can't get out of. Any other bad contract, like a contract situation that's turned bad, or the moment it looks like it could turn bad, they've just dumped off on somebody else. That's the one that you can't do that with.
you can't do that with goalies. I'm sorry, you can't give the goalie the big contract. That was, well, here's the thing. That was, I think, the one time in franchise history where they were ever sentimental.
It was. Yeah. No, I'm
I
totally
think
with you
it
on
was
that.
based off him leading them to the Stanley Cup, and he wins the cup, and they have that run. And I think that's like the one player they've ever gotten sentimental about,
Yep. Totally agree.
and they got burned for it. So
Yep.
on the Calgary side of things, solid deal. There's not a ton to talk about because you're
No,
basically getting
you did what you
futures
had
here.
to.
You did what you had to, exactly. Now on to the final trade here. The Sharks get Kiefer Sherwood from the Vancouver Canucks for a pair of second round picks, one in 2026, one in 2027, both of San Jose's own picks, and then Cole Clayton, who's just a prospect defenseman. So Sherwood for a pair of seconds is basically the deal. And I think this one's interesting because certainly when talking about the Sharks this season, I've talked about how they need to address their blue line.
Mhm.
Like that is the big area to go and improve. But they trade for a forward.
Mhm.
And with Kiefer Sherwood, another interesting profile of player. He's having a career year at age 30. He he he's got a little bit of scoring ability, more so this season than at any time previously in his career. So I don't know how sustainable that is. And the big story with him is he hits everything that moves.
Yeah.
He led the NHL in hits last year. That's the big thing the teams love about him. He's going to be a big energy guy in your this year middle six. Longer term maybe bottom six if you do re-sign him. What do you think of this acquisition for the Sharks? Doesn't feel like exactly what they need, but they're probably not done.
They're probably not done. I guess if you're giving up the 2 seconds for him, you feel like you're re-signing him.
Yeah.
And we'll see how much like money that takes, because I think ultimately this whole deal will come down to that extension, right? If that extension is a very large number where you're paying off of the production he's getting this year, where he has his highest ever shooting percentage and everything is going right for him, and he was able to be in a situation where he was getting over 17 minutes a night in Vancouver, because what else was Vancouver going to do? He was the only guy doing anything there. I feel like if you give him the payday off of that, this turns into maybe a bad deal for the Sharks, because you just don't want to tie up that money in a guy like Kiefer Sherwood. That being said, I think Kiefer Sherwood does make sense as the only type of forward that they should have acquired, and that is a player that really wants to live in that net front place, right? And be in that area of the ice, and go there for the rebounds and be aggressive on the forecheck and open up those lanes for Celebrini and Will Smith, or even if he's going to play with like Alexander Wenberg, this is the perfect kind of player to play with Wenberg. He can open up the one lane that Wenberg does like to kind of go and try to score goals with, right? Kiefer Sherwood can open up that lane down the middle for him, or he can just be a guy that's going to be net front that Wenberg can throw it to back door and he can score, right? So I think that this is the one type of forward that actually made sense for the Sharks from a stylistic standpoint, from an attitude standpoint. I think he fits in, and the idea of, look, as we continue to get better and grow as a team, we're going to need to have some of this to the lineup, particularly if we want to be a playoff team come playoff time. You're going to need a guy like Kiefer Sherwood out there. And this group didn't really have somebody like that. That was going to be, look, they have Ryan Reeves. They have a guy who can be the physical element of it and all of that, but they didn't have a guy that could do that while still being able to play in the top six, right? And do the things that Kiefer Sherwood could do. Ryan Reeves is not going to score 17 goals anymore at the age of 39. It's just not happening. So I like the deal from that angle too, is that, you know, they brought in a guy who helps them out this year. He gives them something if they make the playoffs and as they go through that push for the postseason. And I think he'll be like a good guy that can help teach some of the other young guys coming up what they need to do and everything like that. If again, it all comes down to the extension though. If they sign him for too much money, if he signs for $6 million a year or something, no, you blew it. That's not the way to, that wasn't the thing to do. But if he signs at 4.5, it's probably not terrible if it's, you know, not a too long of a deal.
Yeah, you can live with say 4.5. I think that's probably
It's
okay.
it's
I mean,
probably higher than you still want it to be, but just throwing it out there,
yeah,
it's
I mean,
survivable.
and I don't think it's going to be that low. I mean, the early reports are that the Sharks and Sherwood are pretty far apart on numbers for an extension, and Sherwood really seems to believe in his value there. So
Well, he has to.
I'm
Like, this
gonna,
is your time, man. Like,
yeah,
go
this
for
is
it.
your one chance to get paid. He's got to get paid.
Yeah.
If I'm him, I'm going wherever basically offers me the most money, and so that's why I worry about this a little bit. Like I agree with you. I think if the Sharks were going to bring in a forward, the fit is really good. Like this is the type of forward you want to bring in. I was all ready to hate this deal because Sherwood to the Sharks had been rumored for a little while,
Hmm.
so like I'd been thinking about it, and it scared me because, well, one, the asking price it sounded like was a first round pick, and so that I was like that's too high for
Yeah.
this kind of deal, and so I think the Canucks kind of came off their price a little bit. At least that's what the reports were. So for a pair of seconds, I don't hate it, but also with this, like Sherwood again, he's not just a guy who hits everything. He does have some skill there.
Hmm.
He's clearly not a play driver,
Right.
but on this team, he doesn't really have to be,
Right.
given the other players that you have who can drive play. So like I like this deal more than I thought I would for the Sharks. Like it actually seems to make some sense here. I'm not going to like the extension. I know that already. Like that's what's going to ruin it for me. So I'll get in now and say that I like this deal because I haven't seen the extension yet. That's kind of where it is for me.
Yeah. It's look, I as you know, as much as I talked about it, he's not going to like shoot at the percentage he's shooting at this year. I do think he has figured out that because you know he did have 19 goals last year. Like he's not incapable of putting up 15 plus goals. I think that is a reasonable expectation to have for him for the next couple seasons, and potentially greater if he's going to be on the San Jose team and playing with some of the players that they have. Not that I think he's probably going to be playing with Celebrini that much, but you know, just to be out there. And he will on the power play probably. There's no reason he should not be the net front guy on the power play unit moving forward, right? But it is one of those things that I do think is valuable, and I would tell any young players that are kind of profiling more as a Kiefer Sherwood type player, look at what he's doing because he just goes to the net front. Like he has unlocked it that if you're willing to put up with the punishment of going to the net front, you will be rewarded for it. If you go and you're able to physically box out a defenseman to be in that position for the rebound, you'll get it. And I think that there is something sustainable to that, that as long as his body can handle that punishment, and guys have shown that their bodies can handle that punishment for a time, doesn't definitely does not last forever, but it's not a short-term thing either.
Makes the
That
extension a little more dicey, but yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Again, the term on the extension is going to be a lot because he's also, you know, he'll be 31 by the time the extension gets signed. Uh, he's not going to put up nothing. Like he's not going to, this isn't just a UFA year, free agency year, you know, um, aberration. This is sort of legitimate for him. The idea of him being a 15 to 20 goal scorer is legitimate. And I think that, you know, again, the Sharks value having somebody that's going to go to that area of the ice because they don't really have anybody else that's going to do that. And even some of the guys that profile more as power forwards in their prospect pool, that could do that, like an Igor Chernyshov, somebody I'm very high on and has had a great run, although I think he was just sent down. Um,
Yeah.
he's going to need somebody who can teach him those things, right? And I feel like Kiefer Sherwood's a good guy that can do that.
Yeah, and again, I don't hate the player fit. I just, I look at all the free agent contracts for a guy over 30, and
Yeah,
like who's dangerously close to, if he aggresses at all, just basically being a fourth liner who's being paid 5.5 mil for another 4 years or something. And but here's the thing, a question for you, Dylan. Like, am I overreacting to that part of it because I'm so used to the flat cap world, or slowly rising cap world? I mean, does that danger even exist anymore with the cap going up as much as it is? Like, if they sign him to 5 times 5.5, like, do they even care? Are they even like right up at the cap? Are they even worried about this in 4 years? With the cap's, 130 million, 140 million?
probably not,
So
right?
maybe I just need to adjust my thinking, because like I'm realizing like teams don't really face these constraints anymore. In a flat cap world, that kind of contract will kill you,
Right.
but maybe not anymore.
Well, and we've talked about it, right? A team can survive one bad deal. And
Yeah.
so if he's the one bad deal and he still kind of provides something that like the guys like and whatever, you can get away with that. But with the rising cap environment, that you could probably survive two bad deals if they're signed now-ish, right? Like, and they're not like the huge deals, right? Like we
Mhm.
just talked about the Aiden Hill contract for Vegas. That contract's going to become less and less of a problem for Vegas moving forward, right? And I think the Kiefer Sherwood deal will become less and less of a problem for the Sharks moving forward. And if you're going to be cynical about it, and I hate thinking about these sort of things, but I did just mention guys can take that punishment for a time when it comes to playing
That's
to
the
that
IR.
net front. They can't take it forever. At some point, if he was to play that way and take all those cross checks and everything, he'll end up on LTIR for the last year or two of the deal anyway.
Yeah, I mean that is. I do think teams take that sort of thing into account. If the reason, say that it's they can't maintain that level of play or whatever, it's that you're worried about injury risk. Well, there's a limited downside to it. So maybe it could be a point here too. I mean, it certainly would fit that type of player, because oh boy, does he put his body through a lot the way he plays.
Yeah, definitely. And those guys tend to have issues later. It's just the reality. It's the trade off they make for being in this position where he can sign whatever deal that he's going to be able to sign this offseason.
Yeah, but good for sure what he's going to get paid. That's for sure. And we'll see whether it's with San Jose or another team. But yeah, solid deal for the Sharks. I think they're almost certainly not done. Sounds like they are listening on a ton of stuff for a defenseman. They need to acquire a defenseman before the
Hmm.
deadline. They have to make an upgrade there if they're serious about trying to make the playoffs, which this trade tells me that they certainly are. They're kind of trying to go for it this year. But yeah, we'll see what other moves are still to be made. I don't know, Dylan, do you think we're going to get one more trade, like say probably right after we finish recording this? So in like 20
Probably.
minutes, are they going to,
Yeah,
is a
probably.
trade going to
That's
drop?
that's the way things go. I do think, and it's not a conversation for now because we're already over the hour mark and everything,
Yeah.
but at some point, certainly the one thing that I think nobody is talking about in San Jose, and this is partly because it's San Jose, they only have one defenseman on this team that is signed through the 27-28 season. You only have two defensemen that are signed through next year. So San Jose is going to have to completely rebuild their blue line. Now I'm sure they'll extend some of the guys they already have, whatever. But this is like it is very odd to see a team have so few defensemen under contract long term, because generally teams want to make sure that they have some sort of stability there, and they when they find guys that they like, they want to make sure that they can lock it down and have those guys long term, and that has not happened yet so far for San Jose. And the only reason they have that one player through 27-28 is because it's Sam Dickinson, and that's how far his ELC runs.
Yeah, he's the only defenseman who I think you can pretty for sure say is going to be on this team in a couple years. It's going to be part of this blue line. Aside from that, you got to remake the whole thing. But you know what? Given the state of the blue line, I think that's not the worst thing.
No, it's not,
Um,
but
the
it's a
only
big
bad thing is
task for a career.
you're going to have to pay current market prices. But yeah, it is a big task for Greer. But I'm looking at this list, and I don't think there's anybody who I really feel comfortable signing to a long-term extent, you know, or saying, yeah, this is part of my core on this blue line for a while. Maybe Timothy Liljegren is the closest thing on this list to that for me, but otherwise, yeah, bring in some new bodies here,
Yeah, I'd have
especially and well, because it's been discussed rumor wise that they might like try and bring in a defenseman who's maybe younger with term, but then also move out guys like you know, say a Ferraro or you know, or a
mhm.
Darnay or some of their expiring guys. Like you could do a lot of very interesting work here ahead of the deadline if you're Greer.
Yeah, I think he has a lot of flexibility. That's the one thing that this situation does give him. I'm very curious. The guy I could see being re-signed the most is Klingberg. And I know you and I have watched him. He struggles so much at 5-on-5, but I think they like what he adds to that power play.
I guess so. Although if you're seriously trying to be a playoff team, you need a better power play quarterback than that.
Yeah, I
Like
agree.
it's simply not going to cut it.
But the idea of them extending him at like for like 2 years at roughly the same money wouldn't shock me.
I wouldn't go past one more year, but that's me. So I'm not. I don't know. I don't like what he brings right now. So
I'm not talking about like or dislike. I'm talking about what I could see them doing, and I could see them
oh no,
doing
I
that.
could totally see that. Like I still am questioning Mike Greer and his ability to build around the core that he has. You know, we'll see. The drafting's been fantastic. You got lucky winning the lottery to get Celebrini. The bigger task still lies ahead, and I think that's where we'll really, you
The
know,
blue
see an
line will be
evaluation as a
interesting.
GM. Yeah,
I like the forward free agency moves and stuff that he's done.
that's true. Like Toffoli's been great, and I
Toffoli's been
like them
great.
re-signing
The
Wenberg.
Wenberg thing has been good and will be good, and those are deals for guys that are over 30 that aren't too long or too
Right.
much.
That
Like
limiting the term is huge.
so
So
in some ways that only sets you up to be judged harsher, my career, because you've proven that you can be smart with this. And
yeah,
now you have a standard to be held to. That's the key for general managers is you got to make sure that those first free agent signings you make are bad, so that then when later you make the good ones, everybody's like, I figured it out. There's, you know, it's okay. You don't want
I
the
was gonna
first
say
ones to be
make
good
make
because
the
then you got
bad
nowhere to
signings
go.
early so that there's no standard you're held to. Dylan, this is not the Kraken
I was
podcast
gonna
that we
say,
have.
it's
This is the Red Glare
it's been
podcast, and I
proven.
think yeah, and I think we should probably wrap it up before it turns into a deep dive
Yeah.
episode. But thanks everyone for joining us for this Red Glare podcast. Let me know what you think about the left-handed versus right-handed rosters.
He spent a
Curious what
lot of
everyone has.
time on this. Like, I know he's been working
Too
on this
much
all
time.
week.
Too much
Not
time.
necessarily, but we do want feedback on that for sure.
Yeah, so let me know what you think, or if you think it's a bad idea entirely and I should stop putting effort into things, let me know that too. But thanks everyone for listening. We'll see y'all next time.